Hey all, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we're going to be talking about creating a bot for my website using Actors in F#. So I recently released 1 million checkboxes, a site that lets anyone check and uncheck checkboxes and have those synced across the internet. Now, as you might imagine, many people like to cause mayhem with public works, which results in some crude shapes and words appearing relatively frequently on my website. Now, largely, I think this is part of the fun of making publicly available tools, seeing what people do with it, but at the same time, it's maybe not great to host these crude messages on my website. And so to solve this, I decided I would build a bot that would slowly introduce noise to the checkboxes. This lets the system run as it should, but also means that no bad messages stay up forever. And in this post, we'll go over how I built this bot using Actors in F# with a mailbox processor. Now, first off, let's start off with a overview of 1 million checkboxes and kind of how it works. So basically, it's just a website, displays a million checkboxes. When you check and uncheck a box, it gets synced to everyone else on the website. So I have it pulled up here. And basically, when I check these, everyone else on the site can see this. And so you can see that, we've got all sorts of random checkboxes, and every now and then we get some not so great pictures on here. Like here, someone is advertising for NeoVim, which is, great. And so basically the way it's built, the front end is HTML with HTMX. HTMX is what's actually doing the polling and getting the new checkboxes from the server. The backend is just F# and Giraffe, and then the data is in memory. And what this means for us is that in order to change the checkboxes, we basically just need the bot to update the data in memory. And for a deeper dive on how I built this, you can check out this post, which goes into how I built 1 million checkboxes. All right, so building an automated bot using MailboxProcessor Actors with F#. So a mailbox processor in F# is basically a very simple actor. There's a lot of frameworks out there like Akka and RX and stuff like that that have more robust actor systems that might be able to be distributed across nodes, similar to Beam, Erlang, Elixir, stuff like that. Mailbox processor itself is basically built into the F# standard library and is just a very simple version of this. And an actor itself really is just a consumer of a queue. That's basically all it is. So messages are stored in a queue, and then the actor just consumes those messages and does some work. And this is often how you can get no-lock concurrency done. Assuming you're willing to take on some latency and that these will not be synchronous processes, they're almost always going to be asynchronous. And so my bot's goal really is to just change boxes over time so that any bad messages eventually disappear, but also don't do this so fast that it gets in the way of people checking boxes. We still want people to be able to, draw whatever pictures they want, but just over time, it will slowly degrade. Now, if we think about what this needs, really, it's just a long running loop that has a delay. Every X seconds, let's go and check or uncheck a box. Now, this fits pretty nicely into the idea of a cron job, some sort of task that runs on a cron or at some periodic time. And actors are just lightweight queue consumers, and we can also trigger events on a timer, so we can, on a cron job and queue an event. And so actors seem to fit pretty nicely here, especially because we have a native mailbox processor that makes setting this up super easy. And so, I'm using F# to build my backend, so I reached for a mailbox processor to build its core functionality. Maybe this isn't the most robust solution, but really this is just a stupid little website, so we might as well use the thing that's pretty simple. And I built a small utility to create cron jobs using a mailbox processor for its implementation, because this is something you could, find useful in a lot of different scenarios, so might as well build a utility for it. Basically what this does is it creates a mailbox processor. It configures it to run itself every X seconds, and then when it runs, it calls the configured action. And so here's the message. It's really just a cron task. It just says run, and then you call this function create cron mailbox processor. We give it an interval, which is a time span, so this allows you to say seconds, minutes, days, whatever, and then you give it an action. And so this means that it just takes in nothing, and then you run it as a task. So this can be an async job, which is really good, especially if this is going to be doing some heavy database workload or something like that that requires I/O. And so we just make it flexible so you can kind of do whatever you want in there. Now we're actually creating the processor. So we're going to store a reference to this. And basically, we just call start, and then we configure the loop. So we give an inbox here. This is the loop definition, and then we call loop to actually start it. And inside the loop, basically what we say is we get the latest message out of the inbox. The message is always run, so we always do this, and then we're going to do the action, and then we're just going to wait the interval amount of time, and then we're going to post a new message to ourselves. This is safe because we know that this is a self-contained mailbox, so we'll only ever have ourselves posting and using these messages, and then we return the loop so that it goes and runs again. Both of these are non-blocking on the thread because we're using .NET Asyncs, and so this is a pretty light and simple way to run these jobs. So once I had that utility built, I then use this helper to run a function that basically checks or unchecks a random box every time it runs. And so here's the function itself. I'm passing it a service tree, which is basically a context. And what it does is it determines if it needs to be checked or not. I give a basically 66% chance that it should be unchecked, but then a 33% chance that it should check instead. Then it picks a random index, and I think this is actually off by 1, but that's okay. Then it gets its repo, and then what it does is it updates the repo based on the random index that it wants. And then finally, we configure this all together with our mailbox processor with this function here. It takes in the service tree, and then we call our create cron mailbox processor. We configure it with the interval that comes in from our service tree or a context. This is like, an environment variable or something. And then we give it our function, which says every time you run this, and you're going to do update random checkbox with our service tree here. And this is basically how we're doing dependency injection for this function. Next. So yeah, you can still go and draw crude messages on 1 million checkboxes. Just know that your creations have a lifetime and eventually will be scrubbed away into nothingness. Now, if you like this post, you might also like 1 million checkboxes, globally synced data with HTMX, a little bit more about how I built it, why I built it, stuff like that. Might also be interested in build a simple full stack web app with F# and Giraffe, which is basically how I'm building most of my web apps these days. And finally, you might be interested in how I generated 100,000 web pages for my side project using AI, which also heavily uses actors using mailbox processors with F#. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.